Welcome back. All right, so yes, we're going to talk today about Mike Palmateer. Why? Because it's a fascinating career. When I was a kid starting to watch hockey, all I knew was Mike Palmateer had like the coolest masks. And really, as a kid, that is a key thing, right? Which goalie has the coolest masks? The answer, of course, was Mike Palmateer. That being said, he's an 85th overall pick in 1974 by the Toronto Maple Leafs, and he'd come up in Toronto area, right? He had had knee problems before he reached the NHL, but when he was called by Jim Gregory and told that he was going to be starting against the Detroit Red Wings, he said to Jim Gregory, "Your goaltending troubles are over." This was a tough period for Toronto, and Mike Palmateer became a symbol of hope. So he plays 50 games in 76-77. That's 8th that year in the NHL. 23 wins, which is also 8th. 18 losses and 8 ties, which is 7th overall that year. A 904 save percentage, 7th. Pretty good for a rookie, right? In the playoffs, he's 3-3 in 6 games with a 923 save percentage. He finished 5th in Calder voting. And he becomes really popular with Toronto fans. Absolutely, they love the guy. And that only increases in 77-78. Plays 63 games, that's 4th overall in the NHL. 34 wins, which is 3rd to go with 19 losses, 9 ties. The 9 ties are 8th overall that year. A 911 save percentage is 4th overall in the league. In 13 playoff games, a 6-7 record with a 919 save percentage. So, yeah, pretty solid overall numbers. Very good in the playoffs. Toronto seen as a team that's, not contender, but way better than they had been in seasons previous. 78-79 plays 58 games, which is 3rd overall that year for goaltenders. 26 wins, which is 3rd overall. 21 losses, which is 7th overall. And 10 ties, which is 4th. 909 save percentage is 3rd overall in the NHL that year as goal scoring is going up. 5 games in the playoffs, a 2-3 record with an 892 save percentage. He's 5th in Hart voting. He is seen as the MVP of the Toronto Maple Leafs. He's a folk hero. The following season, he has a hard time. And we're getting into the part where knee surgeries are becoming an issue. 38 games that year, a record of 16-14-3, a save percentage of 873, so a big drop off there. Plays 1 playoff game, loses that game, and has a save percentage of 837. He then had issues with Punch Imlach, general manager of the Toronto Maple Leafs, which is... It's a storyline in yesterday's career video and in today's as well. And honestly, it is amazing that he ended up going back to the Toronto Maple Leafs organization. So he has an argument with Punch Imlach about how much he's worth, right? And the Capitals are looking for a goaltender. The Capitals are looking for some hope. The Caps, not great. Haven't made the playoffs as of yet. And they're looking to sell their fans on hope. The acquiring of Mike Palmateer is part of what causes David Poile to end up being the general manager. He was not the general manager that made the deal on June 11th of 1980, where Mike Palmateer is traded with a 1980 third, which was used to draft Torrey Robertson, tough guy there, in exchange for a 1980 second. Toronto would draft Bob McGill, famous Toronto Maple Leaf there, and Bob McGill, Tim Coulis, and Robert Picard, also going to the Toronto Maple Leafs. So it's not an awful deal for the Leafs other than the fact that it is a public relations nightmare at a time when they don't need it. Remember, this isn't that long after they've traded Lanny McDonald to the Colorado Rockies as punishment for being buddies with Darryl Sittler. Not long before, they're going to get rid of Darryl Sittler too. So he goes to Washington. That first year he plays 49 games, which is 9th overall. 18 wins, 19 losses, which is 8th overall. And 9 ties, which is 10th overall. 878 save percentage. His knees are a problem. And Gary Green, the coach, knows this. And when the owner says, look, I'm paying this guy $200,000 a year because he signs a 4-year, $800,000 in total contract, he's like, you got to play him. And Gary Green's answer was, his knees are gone. Both of them. So the following season, 81-82, he only played 11 games. Had a record of 2-7-2 with an 850 save percentage. It's a disaster. So David Poile becomes the general manager, and within days of becoming general manager, on September 9th, he trades Mike Palmateer back to Toronto in exchange for cash. So back in Toronto now, and with knees that are kind of sort of done, he still plays 53 games, which is 7th overall, 21 wins, which is 10th overall, 23 losses, which is 6th in the league, 7 ties, and a save percentage of 871. His mobility is obviously going to be limited due to the amount of knee surgeries he's had. I think at that point it was 12 is what I was reading. It's a lot. In the playoffs, he plays 4 games, a 1-3 record, 907 save percentage. 83-84, what would prove to be his final season in the NHL. He plays 34 games, 9-17-4 record. The 4 ties was 10th overall in the NHL and an 848 save percentage. They tried to work out a trade for him to the Edmonton Oilers. It hit a snag. It didn't work out. He did end up playing a preseason game for the Oilers the following year. Realized pretty quickly that Andy Moog and Grant Fuhr were the goaltenders and that his knees were done. So he ends up leaving the league. But he really goes through an organization that does pretty well here, kind of becomes a disaster, goes to an organization that's already a disaster, comes back to an organization, disaster. I feel bad for the guy. So he plays 356 games, 149 wins, 138 losses, 52 ties. Career save percentage of 888. In the playoffs, 29 games, 12-17 record, and a 910 save percentage. Very respectable save percentage in the playoffs. But I feel bad because his career was too short, not long enough, due to the knee surgeries that he went through. He had 14 knee surgeries at the time that he retired, and you could give or take one, is my guess. But yeah, one thing with Palmateer when he was in Washington, they had Wayne Stevenson, the other goaltender. So Palmateer's going for knee surgery. Stevenson gets hurt. While he's prepping for knee surgery, they are like, "Can you play?" And he says yes. So he takes an ambulance to the game that night and plays. So that's how dedicated Palmateer was. He would then a few days later go and have the knee surgery he was supposed to have. But just imagine your starting goaltender showing up in an ambulance. I can imagine what would happen if that happened today. If a goaltender that needed knee surgery was called into action while they knew he needed knee surgery, I don't think it would go very well. I don't think fans, I don't think media would take that well at all. But he's tough. He eventually would become a scout for the Leafs in 2002, open up a bar and a restaurant as well in his hometown. Very popular guy, very likable. I couldn't find anything when I was looking this up to say there was anything bad with him. He did have the impasse with Punch Imlach, but who didn't? This is when the Leafs were kind of shooting themselves in the foot, and when they ran out of feet, they shot other body parts as well. And Caps GM Max McNabb, at the time they signed that contract with Palmateer, words that would come back to haunt him, they felt that with a player like Palmateer, I feel we're set in goal for 10 years. And this, again, with modern hockey, Palmateer would be going through a physical, and you'd have a doctor tapping McNabb on the shoulder and saying, so about his knees. We need to talk about his knees. And this is part of the reason why, when you look at hockey now, there's a lot of physicals that guys go through, whether it's trades or before they get signed, because you don't want to end up with a player that's not going to play. Like I said, he just had the 11 games in 81-82. It's remarkable he played in 82-83 at all. Before he even was an NHL prospect, his knee issues started when he was playing in midget, and he had his first NHL, or his first knee injury surgery, and he had to alter the way he played net to increase his mobility. He wore less padding than other goaltenders to try to increase his mobility. He had a weird stance because of his knee problems. So Palmateer had been kind of doing this on the fly and making up his own way to play net, which might have been part of the reason why, when I, as a kid, really liked him outside of just the mask, that he had a different stance. He had a different way of playing. And obviously playing for the Leafs meant that as a kid, watching Hockey Night in Canada, I would see a lot of Toronto games, and I like Palmateer. Also, he was number 58 in the Toronto Maple Leafs top 100 players for their centennial. And again, he was one of the most popular goaltenders in the history of the Leafs. I think he still is. And again, his masks are legendary. Really, really, really good masks. The one he had in Washington was fun. The one he had in Toronto was excellent as well. And honestly, it is too bad about the knee surgeries. According to Wikipedia, he's up to 20 knee surgeries currently, and he's had a knee replacement as well. So that might be out of date. There's a possibility he's had more knee surgeries, and I just hope that he's had a good standard of life and living after hockey, because he basically sacrificed his body for the game. When other players would have said, you know what, I'm not doing this anymore, Palmateer soldiered through and kept playing for 2 more seasons. After, it would have been completely understandable if after 81-82 he said, I'm done, I'm just retiring. only playing 11 games. He still played 2 more seasons. So there you go. Career of Mike Palmateer. A hero that I think I should throw into the THG Hall of Fame. Obviously didn't play long enough or put up the kind of stats to warrant the NHL Hall of Fame, but I can throw him into mine because, again, fighting his way through all those knee surgeries and being willing to get in an ambulance and go to a hockey game. If I'm being prepped for surgery and they're like, hey, can you come play? You guys realize my knees are done, right? Like, I don't think I would have gotten the ambulance and got to the game, but I'm not Mike Palmateer. So there you go. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. As always, don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. And hey, thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.